We've already encountered the three main limitations on damages: foreseeability, certainty, and mitigation. First up is the foreseeability limitation. Hadley against Baxendale just might be the most famous contracts case of all. The rule that emerges from Hadley is that only damages that are foreseeable at the time of making the contract may be recovered. The rule has two parts. First, we assume that promisors can foresee damages incurred in the ordinary course of events, those losses arising naturally from the breach, the normal situation for contracts of this type. In the second branch of the Hadley rule, the promisor is only responsible for special circumstances if it's reasonable to suppose that those losses were within the contemplation of the parties. The promisor must have reason to know of the special circumstances that cause those unusual losses. This rule no longer requires a tacit agreement between the parties or explicit communication about the potential losses. But as a practical matter, express communication is still the most certain way to give your promisor reason to know of your susceptibility to atypical or unusual damages. Both modern common law and the Code incorporate the foreseeability limitation in Restatement Section 351 and UCC Section 2715, respectively. Let me conclude this screencast lecture by considering the excerpt from Danzig's article on the Hadley Rule that's quoted in the notes. Danzig asserts that the increasingly complex nature of modern enterprises makes it, quote, self-evidently impossible to serve legally cognizable notice on an airline that a scheduled flight is of special importance, or notifying a phone company that uninterrupted service is particularly vital. He's surely correct that no commercial airline would assume responsibility for the losses that a CEO might suffer when flight delays cause her to miss a key business meeting. The ticket agent would laugh if the CEO tried to negotiate for coverage of those consequential damages. But does this fact about commercial air travel justify abandoning the foreseeability limitation? I think the answer to this question is emphatically no. In the case of airlines, it's true that you can't negotiate with the person who takes your reservation to take extra care in keeping the flight on schedule. But there's a flourishing charter market that caters to those who need to go places and at times that scheduled airlines don't fly. It would be comparatively easy to negotiate for extra care with a charter operator. Or to take an even more extreme approach, a corporation or an affluent individual might consider leasing or even purchasing a plane. Think about Klein against PepsiCo. If all else fails, the business could consider buying insurance to protect against these losses. Thus, the market offers a menu of options. Of course, you have to pay a premium price for special service, or for insurance against delay. But if the market doesn't provide the service, we can safely assume that the cost to providing it is greater than what potential customers, like our CEO, are willing to pay. In another portion of Danzig's article, he also suggests that courts should evaluate the foreseeability of consequential damages at the time of breach rather than at the time of contracting. A promisor contemplating breach would need to ask the promisee about her likely losses. The promisee could reveal any special circumstances in that conversation. Notice of those circumstances would give the promisor reason to know of the potential losses, and that would make those losses foreseeable and thus recoverable. Do you see any practical problems with such a rule? Please pause the video now and jot down your response to this question. There are two insurmountable flaws to this approach. First, the promisor needs information about potential losses at the time of contracting. Without that information, the promisor can't properly price the risks included in the contract. The promisor would end up charging the same price and taking the same ordinary precautions for both low-risk and high-risk purchasers. Second, nothing would prevent a promisee from strategically misrepresenting the severity of her losses from breach. If she overstates her losses, the promisor will feel compelled to perform, or to make a larger payment in return for being excused from performance. This strategic conduct would profoundly distort decisions about breach. Although Danzig's critiques are ultimately unconvincing, responding to them highlights important features of the foreseeability doctrine under the restatement and the UCC. As we've seen, the rule operates in a complex market for goods and services, and it's crucial to focus on how the rule affects information transfers at the time of contracting, rather than at the time of breach. Thanks for listening.